Milwaukee 2781-20 grinder notes. So I disassembled this after the person that I'm sharing shop space with, Heath, noted that it stopped working. So I brought it home to do a disassemble and inspection, and here are some things that I found. First, this bearing was roached. That is the remnants of the bearing. There are like 3 balls left. There they are. The race, everything just was obliterated. That led to this walking, and if you can see, there's some discoloration of red here and then a little bit of dark here. In the field towards the back, you can see where it kind of danced around a little bit. The bearing is held in the plastic housing, which to me is very cheesy. So I don't, and also this, when I got to it, there was a huge fuzzy pile of ferrous material on the pole of this magnet, that whatever's in the switch, this is the switch. So when you press this, that's the switch there. So it just happens to be that ferrous dust collects right next to the bearing. Sure, that bearing should be sealed, but I have a feeling that probably contributes to it a bit. Also, it's of note, I use this thing and it will run really hot. Like, you can grind and grind and grind, and where a Ryobi will stop and limit, and you have to disconnect the battery and reconnect the battery, this thing will just keep burning in. So that's good, but then I think it might also be bad. The 3 wires that are in here that go from, I don't even know what we're going to call this bus bar or whatever, this mechanism that takes the power from the battery and then shunts it to the actual field and the motor. They were all not in their respective places. Like, they were not as you see here, where each one has a little holder, little C-shaped holder to hold it. They were all over the place. The red one specifically was like looped back here, and this was crunched on top of it. Very poorly assembled. Still functional, but super poorly assembled. The method of disassembly is a bit tricky here. Most of the bolts are the standard size. I can't remember what Torx this is. But there was one bolt, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it here. This one bolt. Can you see? I don't know if it'll focus on this. It's a safety Torx. So it's deep. They did this on purpose. The rest of the bolts are all the same. But they said, oh, well, we got to make it to where it's a little difficult to get in. So getting a deep safety Torx that didn't just run in boop, 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 right? Most Torxes that are this size are going to be 1/4 inch drive, and they're going to have this thickness. And I'm down with the thickness, but in this case, I was not. So I had to completely freestyle this and grind a bit down. I had to grind it down a bit. And then get a socket. And as you can see, I barely even had any room. I had to kind of press down on it. I might have actually started the loosening process with this and had to push down at the same time so as not to strip everything out. That was a pain in the butt. Super pain in the butt. But now you know. So I don't think I ground off the size of this. I think it's the same that would take to disassemble a battery, though. Here's where I have to bring up the Torx safety Torx, which is the type of Torx that has a hole in it. So we're going to talk about, if you see the differences between these three, it has the hole in the end. It is made to not be tampered with. The rest of the Torx fittings on this machine are a T20, or at least that's what I'm using. The one that goes here is a T10, and I did not have these longer shank Torx bits when I first started this journey, so I had ground down an existing safety Torx, and then had to use a combination of sockets like this, and also a set of pliers to get this out, because it was at the edge here. So that was my workaround, but it was so frustrating that I decided to spend the $12 to order up a set of longer shank safety Torxes, because that is ridiculous not to. Even I've always learned that if you need a tool once, you need it again, and that has paid off over my 25 to 30 years of working on stuff many times. So I pre-assembled this part, and I actually, as you saw in the time lapse, I had reassembled everything just to not lose stuff. But in order to not have to completely separate everything, I just took them loose, and when I put this in, the bearing is sandwiched between each side. And if I would have tried to insert that with this torqued, then it probably would have been problematic. So I loosened everything back up, and I kept it loose. I didn't just plop this out and plop it back in. I kept that loose, was able to insert this. Fingers crossed it'll work. So I'm rechecking my torque, which I'm sure there's a torque spec for this stuff, but it's plastic. So I mean, it's German spec, it's Guten tight. And that's all I'm gonna do. And I'm not gonna be precious about it. You can notice, like, the bolts here, they've been worn away on the edge here, and I'm using obviously the same bolts, and they're in the same spot that they were in, which is good. I had put in, actually this thing was greased, and as this happens within geared systems, often the grease gets spun out, and then you've got a mild amount of patina of grease on the gears, but then fresh lube everywhere else in it, because it's not like it's recirculating. So I took the bad grease out, as much as grease that I could find that was blackened or dirty in any way, and then I took the fresh grease and smeared it around, and especially on the inside of the gear mechanism, because then as it spins, centripetal force will force it out. So hopefully that'll be good. Then I had this battery that was non-functional. It would not, it had charge, but it was not working with the machine. Took it apart and cleaned out the contacts. And I basically would take a zip tie and slide it through, and then I would take a piece of this blue towel with dielectric, or not dielectric, but with electric parts cleaner, which is a little bit different than brake clean, and then I would cleaned out the contacts that way. So let's see if that possibly makes this function. So, and it does, and that sounds fantastic. Hallelujah. And then here's our the last piece, which I don't know if this goes on this way. Yep, and it's basically a dust filter grating. It's great. Locks in place. Now we have a fully functional, sounds gnarly. Okay, so that's a Milwaukee 2781-20 4.5 to 5 inch grinder. So 115 to 127 millimeter grinder. Beautiful thing.